It's that time of year again. It's Ubuntu Release Week. Today I'm going to take a look at the flagship edition of Ubuntu 19.10, Eoan Ermine. Let's get started. So first things first, what are the big changes with Ubuntu 19.10? Let's take a look at the release announcement from distro.tube. So Ubuntu 19.10 will ship with the GNOME 3.34 desktop environment. It's going to ship with the kernel 5.3 series. So that's a very recent kernel. I'm on an Arch-based Linux distribution, and I'm currently running kernel 5.3.6. So the 5.3 series is a very recent kernel. You're going to get AMD Navi GPU support out of the box, so that's great. So all those new AMD architectures should be supported. Also, better support for NVIDIA proprietary drivers. I think they're going to ship the proprietary drivers now actually on the ISO, so you're not stuck with the Nouveau drivers, like in a live environment, which is very good because with the NVIDIA cards especially, you have to use the proprietary drivers. The open source Nouveau drivers are just not very good. We also have ZFS on Linux, native support for ZFS. I think Ubuntu will be the first major distribution to actually ship with native ZFS support, so that is huge news. And some language support. We have Ruby 2.5.5, PHP 7.3.8, Perl 5.28.1, Golang 1.12.10, and Python 3.8.0. One thing to note is the ISO size is 2.3 gigs in size. That's kind of hefty for an Ubuntu ISO. Ubuntu has always been one of the least bloated distros, in my opinion. The ISO size has always been quite small for Ubuntu compared to most other major distributions that put everything in the kitchen sink on their images. So I'm not thrilled that ISO size has crept up to 2.3 gigs in size. But let's go ahead and download that ISO, and I'm going to take a look at this today inside a VM. I'm going to install this inside VirtualBox. So I created a VM. I gave this VM 4 gigs of RAM. I gave this VM 2 threads of my 24 thread Threadripper. So I gave it plenty of system resources for the GNOME desktop environment. And let's run through a quick install. So this is the standard Ubuntu installer. We have English US chosen for us by default as our keyboard layout, and that's what I need, so I'm fine with that. Click continue. Then what apps would we like to install? I'm going to do a normal installation, which is going to include your web browser and other utilities, office software, a few games, and of course a media player. But if you wanted, you could choose a minimal installation, and that would just get you the web browser and the basic utilities, but it's not going to give you LibreOffice, it's not going to give you the games. So that would be a little bit of a smaller install if you wanted to choose minimal. I'm going to choose the normal installation because I want to see what all is installed in the normal installation. Do we want to download updates while installing Ubuntu? I'm fine with that. Do I want to install third-party software for graphics, Wi-Fi drivers, multimedia codecs? Yes. When you install Ubuntu, unless you are doing it for purely ideological reasons, you really need to tick on install third-party software. That's going to get you your video card proprietary drivers, especially you NVIDIA users. You need that. Your Wi-Fi drivers, most of your Wi-Fi drivers are proprietary. And of course, you need your multimedia codecs to play video and other multimedia formats and things like VLC, for instance. All right, I'm going to click continue. All right, now we have the installation type. Do we want to erase the disk and give the entire hard drive of this virtual machine to Ubuntu, or do we want to manually partition, which would be useful if we were dual booting with another operating system? We also have the option of doing the experimental ZFS install. You know what? Why not? It's a VM after all. Let's go ahead and choose ZFS. I'm going to click install now. All right, it's warning us that it's about to format the drive and write to the disk. Go ahead and click continue. All right, time zone. It has chosen the central time zone in the US for me. That is correct. So all I need to do is click continue. Now we need to create our username. I'm going to call myself DT on this computer. Now we need to create a strong and complicated password for the DT user. Alright, and do we want to log in automatically? No, I created that strong and complicated password for privacy reasons. I want to be asked for a password, so I'm not going to tick that on. I will leave it ticked on, requiring a password to log in. Click Continue. And now the installation begins. This portion of the install typically takes between 5 and 10 minutes. I'll pause the video while the installation continues. And the installation has completed. That was very quick. That just took a few minutes. And to complete the installation, we need to click Restart Now. And that's what I'm going to do right now. And I've rebooted the machine here. The virtual machine in this case. Let's see how fast boot up time is with Ubuntu 19.10. Of course, I did the experimental ZFS install, but boot up time was pretty quick. I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. Of course, this is the GDM login manager, GNOME's login manager. Let me enter my username and password and sign in. And we wait for GNOME to load. GNOME is always a little sluggish. GNOME is one of the heavier desktop environments available in Linux. It's not going to win any races. Alright, the first thing you see is this little window that automatically launches, asking you to connect to your online accounts, such as your Ubuntu single sign-on account, if you are a member of any of the Ubuntu services, or to connect to Google, or to Nextcloud, or to some of your Microsoft services. I'm not going to do this in this VM, although I do have a Nextcloud account I guess I could connect to. I'm going to skip that. The next thing is Ubuntu can report information that helps developers improve it. So they want to know about telemetry. Do we mind sending telemetry back to Canonical so they can make Ubuntu a better product? Absolutely not. I don't mind that. They're upfront about it, and they share everything out in the open as far as exactly the information they collect. It's nothing personal, no personal data of any kind. They're not scanning your file system, reading your files, or anything like that. They just want information about the machine you're on. So I'm fine, so I will leave that ticked on, which is ticked on by default. Then I click Next. It's asking about privacy. I'm not going to fool with that. And then we're ready to go. Do I want any of these installed? They're not installed by default, but if I want to, I can install Visual Studio Code, Skype, Spotify, Slack. Wow, it's just a proprietary software fest right here. Well, there is some open source software down here, VLC and GIMP, two of my favorite programs. I probably would install those. Discord is also available, Sublime Text. And of course, most of this is probably available as snaps, I'm assuming. Xonotic is here, one of my favorite free and open source games. But you know what? I'm not going to install any extra software. Let's just see what is installed by default on Ubuntu 19.10. Alright, so let me go to the menu system here. And by default, we have All Riot Solitaire. So that's a solitaire game. We have our, of course, link to Amazon. So Canonical can make a few cents if I want to do some Amazon shopping. That's link, all it does is open up your web browser to Amazon, but it puts a cookie on your system, so Canonical can make a few cents off your purchase. We have our calculator, which I'm assuming is just your standard GNOME calculator. Wow, it's taking a long time to launch the calculator. Of course, this is in a VM, so it may be a little more sluggish, but still, that calculator shouldn't take that long to launch. We have the GNOME calendar. We have Cheese, which is our webcam application. And then we have, what is that? Document Scanner. I'm guessing this is a scanning utility. I'm not exactly sure what this is. I'm assuming it's a GNOME app because the versioning is 3.34.1, and we are on GNOME's desktop environment 3.34, so I'm assuming it's a standard GNOME application. And back to the menu, we have Files, which is the file manager in GNOME, which is called Nautilus, is the actual name of the program, but in the menu system, GNOME likes to use generic naming, so they just call it Files. And this is Files 3.34.1-stable. Nautilus, not my favorite file manager. We have Firefox, of course, as our browser. Alright, now let's see what version of Firefox we're on. So if I go to Help and About Firefox, this is a very recent release of Firefox, 69.0.3. We also have LibreOffice, Calc, Draw, Impress, and Writer. Most of the popular parts of LibreOffice are here. This is LibreOffice Writer, Let's see what version of LibreOffice we are on. We are on version 6.3.2.2. LibreOffice is our free and open source alternative to Microsoft's Office suite. LibreOffice is one of the real bright spots as far as free and open source software, one of the most popular free and open source suites of applications out there. And we also have Mahjong for gaming, Minds also for a game. We have our Remina, which is a remote desktop application. It would be used to connect to remote machines. Rhythmbox, which is GNOME's audio player, which is fantastic. One of the best GNOME applications, actually. Rhythmbox 3.4.3. Close that out. We have Shotwell for our image manager, and we have our software and updater utilities as well. We have a disk utility to create USB drives. We have Sudoku. We have our text editor. This is gedit, which is the plain text editor for the GNOME suite of applications. So gedit 3.34.0. Gedit is actually a really nice plain text editor. It actually is customizable. There are plugins for it. Of course, these days I'm using Emacs, and before that I was on Vim, but gedit is actually quite good. And we have Thunderbird for our email client. We have a to-do list. Transmission is the BitTorrent client. That is one of the standard GNOME applications as well. I actually typically use Transmission on all my installs. That's typically the BitTorrent client I install on all my installs, even though I don't use GNOME. I love Transmission. We have the Ubuntu Software Center, of course, and we have GNOME Videos. Let's open up the Software Center. All right, the Software Center actually opened up very fast, and let's just search for something that's probably not installed by default. Actually, we have the option of signing into the Snap Store, so there are snaps built into the Ubuntu Software Center. But let me just search for something that's probably not here. I doubt HTOP is installed by default on Ubuntu, so let's do a search for it. And then I click on it, and I click install, and of course it's always going to ask for your root password anytime you install or remove software. Anytime you make serious changes to your system, it's going to require a root password. So let's do that. All right, and HTOP, of course, installed in just a few seconds. By default, Control-Alt-T should bring up a terminal in all the flavors of Ubuntu, so that brings up a terminal. Now let's run HTOP. Let's see what kind of system resources we're using. All right, so this kind of concerns me a little bit. So CPU usage is pretty low. We would expect CPU usage to be kind of low. We're not really doing anything CPU intensive here. RAM usage, though. 2.2 gigs of RAM are being used at the moment. 2.2 gigs of the 4 gigs of RAM that I gave this VM. That's high. We're not really doing anything. I don't have a browser open. I don't really have anything going on in the sys tray over here. Let's sort this by memory, and let's see what is taking up the most memory. I'm going to make this full screen. Let's see. The GNOME Software Center actually is taking up most of the memory. Actually, the GNOME Shell is taking up most of the memory. The GNOME Software Center is taking up quite a bit as well, even though I closed the Software Center. I guess there's some kind of background process going on with the Software Center, probably checking for updates, which you know what, let me Control-Alt-T again to bring up the terminal. I closed it, but let's see if there are any updates available. So if I sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade, and give it my root password, of course. This was just released today, so I wouldn't expect there to be any updates, but let's just double check it. No, there are no updates available. And while I'm in the terminal, since I have it up, let's see what kernel we are in fact on. We are on kernel 5.3.0-18. You know, one other thing, I keep closing the terminal and I keep thinking of other things I want to check on the terminal. Snaps. I'm going to do a snap list. See what snaps are installed by default. So by default, well, that's interesting. Of course, we have GNOME logs, GNOME characters, GNOME calculator, and HTOP. So when I installed HTOP from the Software Center, it installed HTOP as a snap. That is strange, because HTOP is available in the standard repos. I don't know why you would install it as a snap. That's weird. Also, I noticed GNOME calculator is installed as a snap. I mentioned GNOME Calculator took for what seemed like forever to launch that first time I launched it. And it's interesting that that was installed as a snap. So let's go back and just double check it. I'm going to try to launch the calculator again and see if it loads faster this time. It did. It loaded much faster than that first time. As always, I need to right click on the desktop and I'm going to go to change background. I want to see what kind of wallpapers are installed by default. And okay, well, we have, of course, the default wallpaper, which is the Ermine or whatever critter that is. It's some kind of varmint. But we also have some other interesting pictures here. We've got some nature photographs, such as this one here. I move out of the way. Oh, actually, these are actually really nice wallpapers. Ubuntu typically has one of the nicest wallpaper packs. Every release, you know, they have some really good wallpapers. Wow, I actually like this one right here for a more minimal wallpaper that's just the Ubuntu logo. That's kind of neat. And this one here, I'm not exactly sure if I dig that one or not. It's some kind of abstract art that's got the Ubuntu logo in it. That's not bad. But you know what? I would probably go with something a little more minimal. I'd go with one of the nature photographs. I'd go with that one right there. Yeah, I dig that. Of course, I got to customize this a little bit more. I'm going to go into the settings. Let's go into the settings, and if I go, I'm going to go to the dock, and the dock, the icons are set to 48 size as far as a pixel size. Let's reduce that. That's pretty big. Let's reduce it to like 32. Yeah, that's something much more respectable there. Let's see what else I want to play with in the settings. You know what? I'm going to hit the super key to bring up the menu, and I'm going to type themes because I want to play with the themes, but I'm not sure where that's located in the settings. I'm just going to hit enter. That's taking a minute to load. Or maybe it's already loaded. No, it took forever to load though. It's not installed by default. Well, never mind. I don't want to install anything extra. I was seeing if there was a way to customize the theme, you know, change whatever themes are available. There's the appearance, change the background and the theme. Maybe that one is already here. Is there no application to change the theme installed by default? That is strange, if that is the case. Anyway, let me go back to the settings. Where is the settings? You know what? I don't want to have to keep searching for the settings. I should probably just add it to the dock. I'm going to drag it over here to the dock. There. That way it's always there. And looking through the settings, I don't see any kind of like appearance or theme or anything. I mean, we have Bluetooth, the backgrounds, which we already played with, the dock, which we've already played with, notification settings, search settings, region and language, universal access. Of course, we have sound, power, network, devices, color. Anyway, I was going to see if there were any other GTK themes to choose from, but if I can't find it that quick, complete and total fail, yes, I can install something like the GNOME Tweaks tool or whatever. That's strange that they don't have something obvious, though, where I can change the theme. Maybe it's there, but if I right-click on the menu, display settings, maybe it's in display settings. I didn't think about that. That would be a strange place for it. No. Oh, well. In the center of the panel, we have our calendar here and our notifications, if I had any. And then we have our sys tray over here where we have our network manager, we have our volume manager, and then we have our session manager where we can log out, restart, shut down, all of that, change user. All right, so that was a pretty quick look at Ubuntu 19.10. One last thing I wanted to just check quickly. I'm going to Control-Alt-T. Well, I must have hit the super key. Control-Alt-T. And I want to just double check and make sure we are actually using ZFS instead of extend4. So I'm going to just check our file system really quick. I'm going to run this command df space dash capital T lowercase h just to check the file system. And yeah, you see ZFS right here. I do see a 1.8 gig, or sorry, a 45 megabyte partition, excuse me, for a grub created for extend4. Oh, all right. Anyway, that was just me double checking to make sure we were in fact on ZFS. So that was a very quick look at Ubuntu 19.10 Eoan Ermine. So what do I think? Spending about a half hour with Ubuntu 19.10 in a VM. I like it. as always, Ubuntu is very clean, very polished, very professional. The installation is dead simple, and I love the fact that Ubuntu is really the first major Linux distribution out there shipping with ZFS. I think that's a game changer, and I want to applaud everybody that works on Ubuntu, everybody that works at Canonical, that worked on this release. Job well done. Before I go, I need to thank a few special people. This show was made possible by Ansem, Chris, the other Chris, Daniel, David, DJ, Donnie, Dylan, George, Corbinian, Mitchell, Natek, Philip, Rob, Robert, Sean, Stephanie, and Willie. They are the producers of the show. These guys are my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. Without these guys, this episode would not have been possible. The show is also brought to you by all those other names you see on the screen. Those guys are supporters of mine over on Patreon. Again, without each and every one of those ladies and gentlemen, again, this channel wouldn't be possible. A sincere thank you to those guys. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider doing so. You'll find me over on Patreon. Look for DistroTube over on Patreon. All right, guys. Peace.